correspondence. On your desk tonight, there's a letter from Betsy Ritter regarding the scheduling for ethics. She would not be here on that night. In addition to that, as Glenn Patterson in public comment noted, that there was a letter from Bill Sheen and Glenn Patterson regarding the item 3 on the agenda that we will be dealing with on final action night. With that, there is no other further correspondence. I'd like to move on to item F, the transaction of the business on the call, to consider an act on the general fund budget, which includes both Board of Education and general government budgets for the fiscal year July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026, in the amount of $110,963,979 as recommended by the Board of Finance and as may be modified by the determination of the representative town meeting. Representative Jelinas.
I'd like to offer a standing motion to move each proposed budget for consideration in the order specified in the hearing schedules, with approvals at the series subtotal and the department total levels, with the understanding that all totals are considered tentatively approved until final action is taken at the end of our budget hearing.
Second.
Everybody got that? All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Folks, moving forward on each subsequent night, we're not going to keep repeating the motion. We're just going to say it as is and move forward from there, okay? All right. First on the list, conservation of health. Conservation of health. Anybody here from conservation of health? Hello there. Good evening, Jen. Do you have a brief statement or presentation you'd like to give?
Good evening, everybody.
Oh, green light, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Jen Maggio, Director of Health with Ledgely Health District. Once again, honored to be here before you representing our budget, which does reflect an increase of 3% in the per capita rate. That's our first per capita rate increase in several years. We've worked hard to keep our costs as flat as possible, but we do have contractual obligations as well as increasing costs related to insurance like everybody else. As you may be aware, Waterford has 2 representatives on our board, both of whom happen to sit on this body, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Folks, it's pretty easy. It's line item 52075. Do we have any questions for conservation of health? Any questions for conservation of health? Any questions for conservation of health? Before we move to the vote, I just want to let you know I will be abstaining as I sit as one of the board of directors. Moving forward.
No, I don't care.
All right. Okay. Hearing those abstentions. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none, there's a motion on the floor, standing motion for conservation of health in the amount of $155,063. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed? Abstentions? Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Moving on to public health nursing services. Does anybody like to come up for public health nursing services just to take questions if there are any? Standing motion on the floor for public health nursing service, the amount of $21,600. Any discussion? Representative Driscoll.
Through you, Mr. Moderator. Sorry, but you made the trip, you should ask a question. Anyway, in the backup, because I've already talked to you about the DNA.
Sue, is your mic on?
Yeah, it's on,
Okay,
I'm just
I can't
not
hear you.
close enough. I have too many papers in front of me. But in our backup, we had an email that you had sent to the Board of Finance. And you mentioned sunsetting the programs. Do you have a timeline for that?
Yes, the blood pressure clinics and all of the nurse managed clinics will close as of June 30th.
Okay, thank you. I know it's not your decision. I'm just trying to look at it. Thank you.
No, I understand.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none, there's a standing motion on the floor for public health nursing services, in the amount of $21,600. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to social service grants. Social service grants. Anyone here for social service grants? Okay, there is a motion on the floor for social service grants for the amount of $60,000. Excuse me. Sorry, folks, $103,510. Is there any discussion? Well, we have a representative from the RTM, so I don't know if someone here can answer. What's your question?
So my question is, line item 52,639 lists the VFW posts. Last year we were told, that post 9975 was no longer active. They had been out of operation since the 1980s. It's still there. What do we do?
Tom, you still in that? Hang on, please. Big book. DFW post.
The 9975 is.
One backup material I see was submitted to the committee, one of these is VFW post 6570. Right. Yeah, nothing on 9975.
Can we scratch it out? Like, it was there last year and it was brought up last year that it's no longer a post. What do we do about removing it? How do we go about removing it from this line item? Yeah.
I can probably note down my notes and I'll bring it up to the finance, after this meeting, we'll get you an answer on Wednesday.
That'd be great.
Well,
Okay.
the requested amount for 6573 is $2,000.
Okay,
I think there's a typo on the description line.
okay,
You're right, that one of these posts probably not existent anymore, and the backup material, they're not mentioned,
okay.
you know what I'm saying?
Yep, just to clarify that we can get rid of that at some point.
Yeah.
Clean that up a little bit. All right, then I had another question about the removal of the town historian, amount. It was funded last year for 800 and this year it looks like it was proposed and approved for 0. We don't have a town historian?
I understand that, backup.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to be able to help answer this one.
Go ahead.
There's no appointed town historian. All decisions of the historic properties is being done by the Historic Property Commission as a group, not one person as a historian. So the funding was removed.
Thank you.
All set. Any other discussion? Representative Driscoll.
Not so much a discussion, but a request to whoever is in charge of this budget next year. Could you maybe work up a one-page sheet that says we're giving them this money for this, or what they do, because we got no backup, so we couldn't double check these things. That would be very helpful.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none, there's a standing motion on the floor for social service grants in the amount of $103,510. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Moving on to the Waterford Board of Education. Come on, folks. Hey, Joe, hey, Tom, hey, Pat. Good evening. You have a presentation, or is it no presentation?
Appreciate your sense of humor, Mr. Moderator.
Thought it'd be a quick one.
I was told before the meeting started that brevity continues to be crucial, so we'll go quickly. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the RTM. On behalf of the entire Board of Education, I want to thank you for allowing us the time to present our proposed 25-26 Board of Ed budget. Superintendent Giard will be presenting a detailed analysis of this budget that will hopefully answer many of your questions, provide clarification where needed, and allow you to then make an informed decision regarding the proposed budget. The Board of Ed Finance Committee met 3 times prior to bringing this budget to the full board. At these meetings, there were robust discussions, questions for Mr. Giard, Mr. Mancini, and the administrative team, and suggestions for changes to the proposed document. Following the work of the Board of Ed Finance Committee, we held 2 public Board of Ed workshops where members of the public and all town boards had the opportunity to hear a detailed description of the proposal. As we have done each year, all town board members received a written invitation to the board workshops. In the written invitation, it was also stated that should any town board member want to discuss items further, they were encouraged to set up a time to meet with Mr. Giard. Questions raised following the first workshop, submitted to the board or superintendent's office during the week that followed, or raised at the second board workshop, were answered either at the meeting or by Mr. Giard in a timely manner following the second workshop. This budget is focused on continued improvement, meeting all statutory obligations, and continuing to support the social and emotional needs of all of our students. The high quality of our teaching staff continues to be a priority for this board, and the district has worked hard to provide our teachers and staff with relevant and challenging professional learning. This budget maintains high expectations for all of our students and all Waterford school employees. It balances the needs of our students and those of the Waterford taxpayers. Thank you for your attention, and I will now turn it over to Superintendent Giard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Mr. Moderator, RTM members, Mr. First Selectman, Board of Ed members, other elected officials, administrators, teachers, district staff, and community members. I want to acknowledge our Board of Education for their hard work in the development and scrutiny of this budget. Would also like to introduce our Director of Finance and Operations, Joe Mancini, seated to my right tonight. On behalf of the Waterford Board of Education, I'm proud to present the FY26 Board of Ed approved budget. I'm also cognizant this is your first night of many, but this presentation serves not only to inform all of you, but the citizens of the town of Waterford. Each year at Convocation, I lay out a theme for the year ahead, and we constantly hearken back to that theme throughout the course of the year. This year's theme included engaging in the possibilities. That phrase is certainly applicable as we continue the good work of the Waterford Public Schools. We are actively engaging in the possibilities as the world continues to rapidly change. We continue to be responsive and innovative. For example, we've launched a District Artificial Intelligence Committee examining what our future will look like and how AI will impact the classroom. It is not an if, the when is already here. Our Board of Education continues to examine and approve curriculums that will prepare our students for life, learning, and work beyond school. Our mission statement is the foundation for our board goals, our strategic plan, and our vision of the graduate. We continue to use our strategic plan as our map on the road to success. Our district data team is in place to ensure alignment with our belief that as a district, that sound decision-making is predicated on evidence and information. Successful student outcomes do not come without having a plan. Our plan is a direct result of our board goals, our strategic plan, and our vision of the graduate. Our investment in a rigorous academic program, our commitment to social emotional learning, our promise to educate the whole child through the arts, co-curricular and athletic programs, and an unwavering pledge to continually develop our staff all contribute to the success of our district. We see very strong indicators of success, such as the Next Generation Accountability Index, commonly known as the district report card, where we saw gains in 17 of the 22 indicators. I'll talk more about that in a few moments. You may have recently seen this piece in the Patch and other news outlets that Waterford as a whole, as a municipality, was rated one of the top places to live in Connecticut, with schools receiving great reviews as well. We continue to see successful and promising outcomes for our students. I'm certainly not going to read the long list on this slide, and there's a comprehensive list in the appendix of your budget book. But every town measures the success of their school district by the graduates they produce each year. Last year, 54 Waterford High School students were recognized as advanced placement scholars, with 15 of them being scholars of distinction. I'll talk more about our results in a few minutes, but I think what this slide conveys is that when a student concludes their education in Waterford, they've received a well-rounded education, a comprehensive education, ready to excel in life learning and work. While we see outstanding results in student outcomes, we do not sit still. We employ an approach and strategy of continuous improvement. We have our vision of the graduate, we assess where we are today, we develop strategies such as school growth plans and district strategic plans. We implement those plans and we reassess and start that cycle all over again. I want to spend a few moments talking about the outstanding results and outcomes we've achieved as a school district coming out of this pandemic. As I said and shared in a comprehensive presentation in November with our board, we're proud of all our staff and students' efforts on last spring's summative assessment. There's many data points to be proud of. Average SAT scores for the second year in a row in both math and language arts continue to show an increase. Math performance in grades 3 through 8 show a modest bump. And we continue to see increases in the growth rate in both math and language arts across grade levels 3 through 8. Let's look at an even more comprehensive set of accountability measures that every school district in the state is measured on as a common platform. It's called the Next Generation Accountability Index, commonly referred to as the district report card. It is a comprehensive set of 22 indicators. As you can see on the slide, these indicators include academic performance, growth on state assessments, but also how well our multilingual students perform, how we're combating chronic absenteeism, how well our performance on AP and early college experience exams are going. Are our 9th graders on track to graduate on time? After 4 years, are students graduating? Are they attending 2- and 4-year colleges? To our phys ed performance, and then ultimately access to the arts. So as you can see, it's wide-ranging and it's comprehensive, and each district is measured against these facts. As measured against ourselves from 2023 to 2024, which is the last complete data set we have, we made progress on 17 of 22 indicators as outlined in green. This is significant progress year over year. It is not seen by every district. I don't pretend you're going to analyze that in 5 seconds, but we're going to move on. And while we employ a mindset and strategy of continuous improvement, many people want to know, how do we stand up against our peers? If you attended the Board of Finance meeting, there was a lengthy discussion on the question of, is Waterford getting a return on its investment in education and its schools? While I can unequivocally answer yes, let me share some real data from the state of Connecticut. Real facts on our performance compared to what we spend on the cost of an education in Waterford. Waterford Public Schools achieves above the state average on the aforementioned Next Generation Accountability Index, while at the same time spending less than the state average on a per pupil expenditure basis. So we spend less than most of our peers in the state, yet we outperform most of our peers in the state. In fact, Waterford Public Schools is in the top 25% of all K-12 school districts in the state of Connecticut when you divide what we spend on a per pupil basis by our accountability index score. In essence, how much does a point cost? There's no better metric than the dollars divided by performance from a return on investment perspective. Let's dive deeper. Waterford is 99th in spending on a per pupil basis in Connecticut amongst its 169 communities, in the back half of the pack. We looked at the 20 districts who spend more than us and the 20 districts who spend less than us, and we compared our performance on the accountability index to them. Waterford is that little red dot on the graph, and the other dots are all those other towns, from 79th in spending to 119th in spending. You see a vertical line that indicates the state average for per pupil expenditure, or the left of the line, which means we spend less. The horizontal line shows the state average on the accountability index. So as you can see from this data, we can clearly see there's only one district in this group of 41 districts that spends less than us, but outperforms us. Conversely, we're outperforming an additional 11 districts from this sample that have higher per pupil expenditures than Waterford. Of all 41 districts in this group, from 79th in spending to 119th in spending, we're the 5th highest achieving district. Let's dive deeper. So then we looked at districts who have a similar free and reduced meal status as Waterford. Waterford has a free and reduced meals prevalence rate of 33%, meaning 33% of our families are eligible for free and reduced meals. We looked at districts 5% below us and 5 percent points above us as a sample. Of this group of districts with free and reduced meals status between 28 and 38%, Waterford is the highest performing school district, and again, outperforming 3 districts who spend more than us. Then we took a look at New London County, closer to home. Of the districts who spend less money than the state average, Waterford is again the highest performing district in New London County who spends less than the state average, and nearly tied for 3rd with the districts that outspend us. Then we looked at an even broader sample size. We looked at the 2023 Connecticut School Finance Project grouping of districts that used the criteria the state used to use for the DERGs. You may remember that term from the early 2000s, DERGs, or demographic reference groups. The criteria on this slide was applied to districts in 2023 by the Connecticut School Finance Project. And while we no longer use the DERG designation, this criteria for looking at a return on investment is relevant and looking at communities that are similar to Waterford in their demographics. Things like income, education, jobs that parents hold, family structure, poverty rate, percent of families whose home language is something other than English, and enrollment. It's 26 districts. I'll let you take in those for a second while I grab some water. These 26 towns are similar to Waterford in terms of their demographic makeup, applying the state's criteria in 2023 to what used to be commonly known as DERGs. Of these 26 districts, using that criteria, we are the highest performing school district using the state's metric of this Next Generation Accountability Index, for which all Connecticut school districts are judged on. We outperform 8 districts who outspend us. My point is, we know the investment in education by any municipality is a careful and thoughtful discussion. As you consider your decision tonight, please also consider that the previous investments you've made in the Waterford Public Schools have paid off and will continue to pay off. We as a community have realized an extremely high return on our investment using real data, real facts from the state of Connecticut. We're a top 25% return on investment school district, consistently outperforming many of our peers who spend considerably more money than we do. This FY26 budget is indicative of our continued response to the landscape around us. As we progress through the budget tonight, I'll highlight those areas that show a continued investment in addressing the changing world around us and help to keep us moving forward and excelling. Our Waterford school system and town are rapidly changing. This is a series of slides that we've shown the last few years. I think it's important for all of us to understand who attends our schools each and every day. For those of you who attended the elected officials tour in January, we were able to highlight some of these trends as we walk through our schools. Overall, our total enrollment continues to be fairly stable these last 4 or 5 years. The recent demographic enrollment study predicts that our enrollment will increase steadily over the next decade, primarily due to new housing stock coming online and an increased birth rate. Our schools in town continue to be more diverse each year, which is exciting and more reflective of the world our graduates will enter. We need to ensure that our schools, curriculum, and our staff reflect the makeup of our student body. I spoke about this last year at length. Since 2018, our multilingual learner population has increased 276% from 37 students to about 140. Our investment in staff training in this area, curricular resources, and our work with our consultant friends from Learn are so important. You will see staffing proposals in this budget to help us to continue to meet our students' needs. Another slide that I've shared in recent years. 23 languages are spoken in our schools and across our town each and every day. This is yet another indication that our community continues to rapidly change and be enriched by our students and their families. While we have 139 ML students in our district, we have over 270 families in our district who have a primary home language other than English. I've highlighted on this slide the 4 most predominant home languages other than English in our district, Spanish being number 1, with Urdu, Mandarin, and Portuguese being the other 3. This year, Great Neck is our first school in our district with a bilingual program, as mandated by Connecticut law. By Connecticut law, schools must have a bilingual program when they have 20 or more students who speak the same language other than English. For Great Neck, this language is Spanish. We're providing daily instruction in English as well as Spanish for our students in this program. We now have a bilingual plan. We coordinate that plan closely with Learn and the state of Connecticut. This past October 1st, 2024, Oswegatchie reached that benchmark for 20 or more Spanish-speaking students, and we will launch a second bilingual school per Connecticut law next fall. Talk a little bit more about that later. I will add, Quaker Hill was only 1 student away this past October from also being a bilingual school. Our special ed population, while it continues to hover around 19%, slightly above the state average, that occurred at the same time our enrollment had dipped. Nearly 1 in 5 students in our district have been identified as special education. We have continued to build our in-district programs so that as many students as possible have the opportunity to go to a school in their local school versus an outplacement program. Whenever possible, we maximize our in-district programs and avoid potentially costly outplacement programs. And again, if you were on the elected officials tour, we were able to highlight some of these programs, primarily up at Quaker Hill. As you can see, our free and reduced meal count has increased again after seeing a dip during the pandemic when meals were free for all. As that has gone away, our count continues to approach our pre-pandemic level of 768 students qualifying. Very proud of our team's work in this area of chronic absenteeism. Again, spoke at length to this group last year about this. Each school has a solidified action plan to address chronic absenteeism. Our work is paying off. It's not done. But we did see a 4.5% decrease year over year last year. That equates to slightly more than 100 students not being chronically absent that once were. As you know, students need to be in school in order to learn. Our 2 school-based health clinics that service students in all 5 Waterford public schools continue to increase their numbers year over year. This now 4-year partnership with UCFS has been integral to the health and well-being of our students and families. This program is at no cost to the Board of Education or to the town of Waterford. Our clinics have had over 1,000 mental health visits through March. This is in addition to the mental health support that our own 13 social workers and school psychologists have provided, and in addition to the hundreds, if not thousands, of mental health visits provided by outside providers. Through March, we've seen the highest number of medical visits in 4 years, with 501 medical visits through the end of March. UCFS continues to be an incredible partner. We must be responsive to the changing needs of our community. That's why this data matters. And as school districts, we need to ensure that we remain a district for all students. Many school districts are facing tough budgets. You won't read the paper like I do in this upcoming season. We've all been reading. This means that we need to be smart and make sure that our money is being spent in the most effective ways. We must evaluate current operations and look for areas where we can save money, reduce costs, and reallocate before asking for more. I want to highlight, as a school district, we do not take the support of our local funding for granted. We are constantly looking for creative ways to offset local funding, including the application to competitive grants. This current school year alone sees the pursuit and utilization of over $214,000 in competitive grants. Despite Waterford's town wealth ranking of the 42nd wealthiest town in the state, and many grants being unavailable to us because of that fact, our team, many times on their own time, continue to pursue these grants and opportunities for our students. This is without a grant writer, by the way. Over the last 6 fiscal years, this district has reduced the burden to the Waterford taxpayer to the tune of $875,000, and I'm sure we haven't captured every grant out there. That equates to about $550 per household in the town of Waterford that they would have been taxed otherwise. I think it's important that people understand and hear that despite being about 95% locally funded, due to our healthy tax base of commercial and industrial taxpayers, we continue to be aggressive in ways that offset the responsibility of local funding. As we all know, Waterford schools are approximately 95% locally funded, as I said. Like our continual pursuit of grants, we are also aggressive on the cost containment front. We employ aggressive collective bargaining that has consistently resulted in settlements below trend. We've reduced programs and services. We've employed strategies such as energy efficiency projects, and we try to retain as many of our students as we can. These dollars matter and help us mitigate increases to the local taxpayers. These efforts have reduced our budgets through the years to the tune of millions of dollars. I want to talk a little bit about mill rate for education. This chart shows New London County towns. It shows how much of each municipality's total mill rate goes towards education. It utilizes an equalized mill rate metric, which standardizes mill rates by considering the market values of the properties in their town. In other words, if two towns have the same mill rate, but one has a lower assessed value, the district with the lower assessed value would have a lower equalized mill rate. Bottom line, of the 21 towns in New London County, Waterford has the third lowest equalized mill rate for education. 3% a year inflation, wage increases of 3% a year, and low budgets of about 2% a year show a strong decade of fiscal responsibility. But eventually those realities have an impact. You can see by this chart that wages and inflation have outpaced, and sometimes significantly outpaced, Board of Ed budget increases each of the last 10 years. Each shows the cumulative impact of this reality year over year. How has this reality been mitigated? How can you have inflation of over 3%, wage increases of over 3%, but Board of Ed budget increases of about 2.4 over the last decade? The Board of Ed has consistently over the last decade reduced staff in alignment with enrollment trends, reduced programs, and reduced services. Please know, we visually analyze our needs and reallocate resources before asking for more. While this budget is certainly higher than the 10-year average, this budget increase is being driven by three very definable budget drivers. 99% of our budgetary increase next year falls into the categories of salary increases, health insurance, and the replacement cycle for Chromebooks. We've taken aggressive steps to mitigate all other areas of this budget. The takeaway from this budget driver slide, outside of these major cost drivers, this is essentially a flat budget. Outside of those three cost drivers, the entirety of the rest of the budget is up 12 grand over FY '25. This team and this Board of Education has scrutinized this budget. Many requests in the areas of additional staff, supplies, equipment were denied in an effort to mitigate the impact of these drivers. Even at 4.78, this is one of the lowest, if not the lowest, proposed budgets in Southern Connecticut. Spend some time going through other areas of the budget in a little more detail. Under instructional services, this category includes all contractual increases for certified staff. Once again, I reiterate that we always look to redeploy personnel before asking for more. We will be repurposing a reduction of 2 teachers at Waterford High School to support our multilingual learner programming. We will also be swapping an elementary teacher position to support the addition of a second pre-K classroom at Quaker Hill. We will now see a total of 6 pre-K classrooms across our district, with each elementary school now having 2. Next, while these positions are not necessarily certified teacher positions, we're proposing an additional 2 tutors to support multilingual learner programming who will work side by side with a multilingual learner teacher to service our students at a total cost of about $75,000. This budget sees an increase in temporary pay certified to align substitute teacher utilization with the realities of a post-pandemic school system. Under support services, contracted increases for all non-certified support staff, and there are no changes in staffing. Prior to Board of Finance, somebody asked for kind of a breakdown of salaries, and you know, when you see an increase of over $1 million or almost $1.5 million in salary over certified and support staff, how does that break down? This chart shows the contractual obligations due to changes in steps, lane, and degrees, general wage increases, and then the impact of things such as turnover and changes in grants. Employee benefits. Health insurance, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, is a major driver for the increase in our budget, even with the move to the state partnership insurance plan, which allowed us to bring our health insurance line down by nearly $1 million at Board of Finance. Even with the move to the state partnership plan, we see an increase of $671,000 in health insurance year over year. FICA is reflective of our staff count and salaries. All other lines reflect rate and contractual obligations. Contracted services, we do see a savings in 330 other professional technical services, reduction in that line of over $190,000. Why? Because we brought nursing services in-house. When the VNA notified us they would no longer be providing those services, we brought that in-house, and we're doing some innovative things in that area, but it allowed us to bring our budget down. And then you do see a bump up in legal services as we have 3 union negotiations in FY '26. Transportation, FY '25, current year, is the last year of our current bus contract. We did go out to bid, and we will start a new contract next year, new 5-year contract, and the rest reflects rate and usage and market rates on the cost of diesel. Other insurances, really rate-driven, carrier rates. Under communications, really around usage and rates. Those are the ins and the outs. Tuition, this represents the tuition we pay to public and private special education programs and Waterford students who attend magnet and charter schools. While there are rate increases on students already in outplacements, we are projecting fewer students in outplacements and fewer students needing special education services at magnet and charters next year, hence the reduction in those lines. Couple this with our continued efforts to build high-quality in-district special ed programs, we're able to bring these lines down. And again, if you attended the elected officials tour, you were able to see some of these great programs across the district. Other purchase services, some increases in rates. As we get further away from the pandemic, we do see more staff engaging in professional development outside the district, and those costs have increased on a fee basis as well. Under instructional supplies, I can tell you we cut many requests from staff and principals to help mitigate budget constraints in other areas. Under 611 instructional supplies, you do see a modest increase for a couple of reasons. One being inflation. One being our concerted effort to change over our culinary program to a more commercial-based system, and we have some talented and gifted testing that we have to purchase on an every third-year basis. Software increases are real. We did reduce $34,000 of software products after evaluating their use in the district. We do see some long-term renewal savings. Those are multi-year contracts. Those products come in and out. We do see a slight reduction, but rate increases on existing products, $61,000, and new and replacement products, particularly in the areas of cybersecurity, see an increase of $49,000. Operation and maintenance of buildings, increases in water and sewer are based on trend analysis and increases in rate and volume. On 613 maintenance supplies, this is really reflective of trend, actuals, and inflation. Our buildings are aging. Some of our buildings are approaching the 20-year mark. Things break and need to be repaired. Give you an example. This year, let me use Quaker Hill as an example. Key component of the Quaker Hill HVAC system failed. We had to purchase parts and labor totaling almost $40,000. The Quaker Hill elevator at the start of the school year had major issues. That cost about $40,000. That totals $80,000 in unanticipated maintenance repair costs at just one school. Electricity, the increases on the supply side. We do shop the generation portion of our bill. I will tell you that the aging of the buildings is something that you'll continue to see hitting the budget. In the near future, we will need full-scale replacement of each building's building management system. That's the system that monitors and controls things like temperature, humidity, inside versus outside air, and CO2 levels. Our systems across all 5 schools are becoming quickly outdated, non-functional, and incompatible with modern technology. Textbooks, library books, other supplies, numerous staff requests, again, cut in this area. Library books, modest increase really to support more nonfiction options and multilingual learner resources in our libraries. Again, there was a much bigger request, scaled back. Equipment. Detailed breakdown of the tech requests can be found in your budget book. This reflects the move of the Chromebooks from capital back to operating. That's about $197,000. There's money in here to replace the end-of-life diving board at the pool. And again, as I mentioned earlier, some supplies to really begin moving our culinary program from a residential to a commercial model, and some additional materials to support manufacturing and career pathways at the high school. Dues and fees, primarily reflective of rate adjustments. As we close out here now, more than ever, the value of our community partnerships have paid dividends. Our partners have helped immensely during this time, and they will continue to do so moving forward. As you can see, many of our town departments are up there. They list them all, but we continue to have a great relationship, not only with town government and town departments, but the community as a whole. I want to thank our entire district team, and on behalf of the Board of Education, I thank our staff for their incredible and tireless efforts each and every day. We do great things for our kids. The work matters. I hear time and time again from our parents that the reason they moved to Waterford is because of the schools. Let me reiterate that the board has carefully considered every expense in this proposal. The board does look for ways to reduce costs while maintaining quality. In this environment, it's more important than ever for school districts to be strategic about spending and ensure that resources are being used wisely. The board and I look forward to our discussion this evening. Hand it back to the moderator.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Pat. All right, folks, what I'm gonna do is, just for a semblance of organization, I'm gonna follow the executive summary on the back of your budget page. And then obviously you can ask general questions if you think it fits in there, and also at the end. All right, so first, instructional salaries. Any discussion regarding instructional salaries? Instructional salaries? Any discussion? We're not moving on to support salaries. Any questions regarding support salaries? Any questions regarding support salaries? Moving on, employee benefits. Any questions regarding employee benefits? Representative Childs.
Through you, Mr. Moderator. So my question was, when I heard your presentation to the Board of Finance, the proposal for the insurance, the health insurance shift was still being realized and some answers still, some questions still answered. Are we at a place where we have a firm number for what the savings, a more accurate number of what the savings will look like? Has it changed? Oh, yes.
Yeah, so to be clear, there's no savings by the move to the state partnership plan. We still see a $670,000 increase in our budget. We did take down our budget at Board of Finance to the tune of $1 million based on the information. I mean, the state calculations for figuring out is headcount times state published rates. Every municipality and district in the state pay the same rate. Well, there are some differences by county, because Fairfield County doctors cost more than, say, Middlesex County. But generally speaking, those rates are statewide rates. So the number in the budget book, I don't know, Joe, if you want to chime in, is.
Sorry, wait. Yeah, in total about 8.5 million. 8.5 million? 8.5 million what? Dollars. Yes.
I didn't know the total cost.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Representative Conti.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, I just have a couple of questions. How were the, how did we negotiate the changes to the healthcare? How was that memorialized with the teachers?
Yeah, so one of the earliest things we did when we made this decision in partnership with town government was, so we looked at contract language. We have 7 unions now, because nurses are unionized now as well. We looked at contract language, and we had pretty clear language on change of carrier, meaning going from company A to company B. We currently have Anthem, state partnership plan is Anthem for health. But, you know, there's some language around, you know, there's some slight differences in benefits. We're in a high deductible plan now. State partnership plan is a traditional PPO type plan. So we worked on MOUs with our unions, and we are almost there. We anticipate every union moving to the state partnership plan. And I think we have 6 out of the 7 or 5 out of the 7 signed, and we anticipate the other ones by the end of the week.
So not all the MOUs are executed?
5 out of the 7.
5 out of the 7.
And I think the other ones will ratify by the end of the week.
Would those, I guess this is a general question, would those MOUs come before this board? No, they just
They
go
would
to,
not, no.
they go to the Board of Ed?
Yep. The public documents, I'm happy to give you a copy.
No, I was just curious because it's a modification of the CBA, so I didn't know if, you know, we usually get that, but I didn't know if a MOU would come before this body.
It does not.
No, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Representative Jelinek.
First of all, thank you all for being here. I love that this is the biggest probably attended meeting that we usually have, so I do appreciate that. I have a question with the insurance. I know that you've already reduced it. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for us to work and look at the taxpayer, as we had someone comment tonight, and kind of a joint effort with the RTM and the Board of Education. Is there any contingency? My understanding is there's a bit of a contingency in this education. Is there something that the town could do to support that so that's not in this compounding budget?
Yeah, I'll give the 30,000-foot answer, and then I'll let Joe kind of
Great.
chime in on the details. So when we were at Board of Finance, that question very similar to yours was asked about the migration from what we have now to state partnership plan on July 1st. It is a good plan. I mean, we received little to no pushback from the unions, to your point, about that switch, because it's considered an excellent plan. More and more communities are migrating over. One of the things we did is we called districts similar in size to us and said, hey, in the last couple of years, you migrated to the state partnership plan. What kind of migration back did you see from people who weren't taking health insurance for whatever reason, but because it's the state partnership plan, what kind of numbers did you see migrating back? So we had that data, I think we put 2 or 3 districts, East Line being one. We also talked to our health benefits consultant who has statewide experience, and we certainly did plan for some migration back. On that front, that's a detailed question, I'll let Joe kind of chime in on that.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So we assumed about 11 people coming over the plan. What you have to remember about our operations right now, even though we're not a high deductible plan, not every employee is eligible for that benefit until they reach so many years. East Lyme saw about 19 people coming into the plan. You will have some. This plan is functioning different than what we've had in the past, right? In the past, what we had is called internal service fund. And that internal service fund would pay all the claims that came out. In this instance, you're buying a fully insured plan. The state's gonna send you a bill for every single person that shows up. Traditionally, that shows up in the general fund. I mean, I think it's a realistic number. I think, 11 people we have 317 taking it now, so it's roughly 2.8%, 2.9% contingency. I think it's a real number, but if you guys have a suggestion for how else to make up that number, I'm
So
all ears.
what is that real number? And I'm gonna look over towards Kim and Rob. Is there a way that we can kind of partner and help them in this situation? Does any of that make sense to anybody?
Nope, it does.
Okay.
She asked on dollar.
On the town side, we did not budget for any contingency or staff migrating over from the old to the new plan. My recommendation to the first selectman was if that happened on either the town and the Board of Ed side, that we would go to the internal fund that we have for insurances already that employees have paid into. So that fund is not going away. It's basically going to sit there when we finish paying off claims from the old plan. I think that is a good way to use some of it because it's hard to budget who's coming over. But those are real costs that would hit both the town and the Board of Ed that were unbudgeted. So my recommendation was to use that fund so that we did not need to come back to the boards to request additional appropriations. So I believe, yes, there is a way to do that.
Okay, so what does that number look like, Joe?
All right, so it's 11 people at $31,042 per plan.
Okay.
Which is roughly the average. So $341,462.
41,462?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll get back to you later.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Representative Morrison.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Moderator. I don't know if this is the right time to ask these questions, but first I want to say I'm proud to be in Waterford, to live in Waterford. Our school system, I think, outshines a lot of districts around us, and I thank you for that. One question I have, obviously we're always looking to move forward with quality, making sure everything is where it needs to be. So my question is, and hopefully I wrote this down correctly. So for the continuous quality improvement, or the CQI, what is the CQI mechanism that the district uses to measure progress towards the desired outcomes, and how often is the CQI data examined to ensure that the district is staying on track to either, status quo or even get better, depending on what the state is looking for. And then I have after that one more question.
Great question. I think I'm gonna bring up, if I can get this to work and cooperate with me, a slide that I went to, talked a little bit about earlier. We have a number of ways that we measure progress in the district. I mean, the most observable way is our achievement data, which we share with the board each and every November. Let me go back to this slide. this is a common, what I mean by that is, it's duplicative across every district in the state of Connecticut. This is called the Next Generation Accountability Index. So every district in the state of Connecticut is, for lack of a better word, graded on these 22 indicators. So I'm not gonna read every one to you, I'll just highlight some. So we have ELA performance, so that's your English language arts, that's grades 3 through 8, as well as SATs in high school at grade 11. That's in that same metric. How are our high needs students performing? High needs is special education students, free and reduced lunch students, and multilingual learner students. You can see on here chronic, you see academic achievement all the way down through 2F, and then that jumps to chronic absenteeism, jumps to preparation for college and career readiness, which is really like your AP and ECE performance, advanced placement exam performance. So this is probably the most observable way when you're looking at districts across the state, but in this case in Waterford. We have a district strategic plan, and the board sets goals every year. Those are covered at board meetings. New this year, we launched in February. The measurement of board goals has been fairly qualitative through the years. At the February Board of Ed meeting, we launched a new district dashboard to quantify board goals with metrics. So for example, if we're looking at school culture and climate, for example, which has been a long-standing board goal, we're looking at student survey data. How do they feel about their school? We're obviously looking at staff and parent survey data as well. We're looking at suspension data, for example. Are kids engaged in learning and not misbehaving? Those sorts of things. So those are some very observable ways that we're looking at things on a district level, on a school level. All 5 schools have a school improvement plan called the school growth plan. They have 4 areas that they develop plans and metrics around, and they have their own school dashboard with metrics too. So they have school growth plans that have strategies in academics, behavior, culture and climate, and chronic absenteeism. The assistant superintendent and I meet with every principal on a monthly basis to look at their data and their plans, and formally 3 times a year, 3 90-day cycles, they share that data not only with us, but with our district data team as well. Those are some ways. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, thank you. And I just have one more question. And I'm actually really surprised, I mean, it's not a bad thing that we have many English as a second language families and students. So my question is, for these particular students and families, is there a plan in place, either a natural support plan or say a contracted service to help families who really English, I mean, for some families who just can't speak and understand English, is there a mechanism in place, either a translator, interpreter service, to assist these families when filling out appropriate, the documents for enrollment or during IEPs and so forth? Is it something that you look to, like the family's natural resources to act as an interpreter, or is there like a language line that you tap into? And that's my last question.
Sure. So the answer to all those questions is yes. That's the short answer. We've done some heavy investment using technology and contracted services to make sure that our parents are kept informed in their native language. First thing we did is we contacted every family in the district who we had knowledge of that maybe their predominantly home language was not English, and we said, what language do you want communications coming home in? And we firmed up our database to find that out. Beyond that, on a technology front, our school messenger platform, which is our mass email communication system, district announcements, things like that, schools can use it for school-based announcements. That goes home in 30 languages that match our families. We also have, you mentioned Language Line, which is actually a proprietary brand of a service we contract with called Language Line. So parent shows up, parent-teacher conference, a PPT where their child might be special education, they don't speak English, or they just show up to register their child. We can dial a secret hotline number, not really secret, and that they offer over 400 languages of translation live on demand. So we dial the phone number, we say we need a translator for Urdu, and literally within seconds we have an Urdu speaker on the line, we're able to translate. One more product that's actually in teachers' hands this year is a product called Talking Points. And that allows teachers and administrators at the school level to communicate with families through email and a chat app, no use of phone numbers, it's all anonymized through the system, where our teacher types in English and the family sees it in their native language on their phone instantaneously. They type back in their native language and our staff sees it in English. It's amazing. So those are some very observable ways that we've invested in some resources to make sure that not only can our families understand us, but it also goes to how welcome do they feel in our community and our schools.
Thank you.
All set? Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Representative Khan.
I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Moderator. One follow-up question to the question I had before about the MOAs and MOUs.
Sure.
Did we have to, was that a simple negotiation, or did you engage in like effects bargaining? Did we have to like give up, did they ask for raises or something like that that were kind of
No.
eating the savings?
No, it was really around, no, there were no concessions made to achieve the signing on those MOUs. It was really around clarification. So for example, what happens if the state partnership plan folds and now their people are coming back? We had to iron out what's the plan people are coming back to. So that had to be settled. We had some situations where employees might have had to wait under our current plan now. They might have had a different deductible in their first 3 years of employment, and then after that, their deductible went to this. Because we had a high deductible plan, there were some differences in HSA funding, health savings account funding. All those details had to be ironed out, but no concessions were made by management, administration / board to achieve the migration to the state partnership plan. Mainly because it's considered by most, if not all, to be an excellent plan.
No, thank you.
Representative Alderman Bosley.
Through you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you so much for your presentation. I do appreciate it. The school system is part of the reason we moved to Waterford. I had a question regarding the tuition side. When you spoke to desires to cut back on paying tuitions for magnet schools, coming up with different ideas, initiatives to keep and maintain students that live in Waterford and Waterford schools. So on the elementary level, I was just wondering, what are some of those measures that have been taken? Like, what are some of the new programs or initiatives being offered to retain students?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the first thing that we did, so we've been able to reduce our magnet school population over the last 7, 8, 9 years by about 35%. So that's a significant reduction in the amount of students and the amount of dollars leaving the district. To be honest with you, the first and foremost thing we did very early on is we surveyed our magnet families and we said, why do you send your child to a magnet school? And that was like 7 or 8 years ago, definitely pre-pandemic. So we got survey data back and we analyzed that data. The number one reason 8 or 9 years ago when we first did that survey that parents sent their child to a magnet school was a perceived lack of diversity in the Waterford public schools. So that led to kind of a thought process of like, how much marketing do we do? So really it's resulted in a few things. Marketing being one, and making sure people are well informed what we have to offer. If you're sending your child to Marine Science Magnet High School, for example, did you know we offer a whole battery of marine science courses in our high school? So really marketing what we have, all the way from programs like that to the social and emotional learning programs we have. We have full-time social workers and school psychologists in every school, all that sort of advertising. The other thing that we've done, and I want to give our principals and assistant principals at the building level credit for the next comment, is when we've had interaction with a parent who maybe is sending their child to a magnet school, they've done a phenomenal job saying, just come in for a tour, spend a couple hours living and breathing what it's like to be in one of our 5 Waterford public schools, and really marketing that way. Print marketing is great, emails are great, but until you live it and breathe it and see the positive school climate, the positive school atmosphere we have. So I really want to give our principals, those are some observable ways.
So, I've been speaking with some residents, mostly some of the parents of some of my kiddos' friends, and there is a growing Hispanic population in the town, so I was wondering if there was ever any thought, I know this would be a costly initiative, but any thought to adding language classes to elementary schools? I think there seems to be a significant, well, at least with those I've been speaking to, an interest in that being offered in schools. I know a lot of magnet schools offer language courses earlier on, prior to getting to middle school. What I've been hearing from families is that would kind of make them feel more welcomed and more connected to the community and appreciated and seen in a different way. So just wondering if that was ever a thought.
It predates my time in the district, but at one time, the Waterford Public Schools did offer world languages, Spanish at the elementary level. It was before my time. Somewhere along the line, probably at a meeting like this, it was decided we're not gonna do that anymore, probably for budgetary reasons. There's not necessarily been, Madam Chair, certainly speak up if you have something to add, but there's not certainly been, I mean, there's been informal discussions that it would be a great thing to offer. We've done some after-school programming with world languages at the elementary level. We've tried some Mandarin Chinese. Actually had a conversation with Mr. Macrino the other day about maybe reviving that. But during the school day, in all honesty, the last 8 to 10 years has really been, about what are the absolute necessary services. When we've seen inflation over 3%, salary increases over 3%, not that you don't look to move forward, because you do, and I'm certainly not speaking for the board with my next comment. It's certainly, something that has been informally discussed in schools and circles and with parents, but not formally at the board level at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, Representative Colonis via speakerphone has a question.
Hi, Tom. Hey, Paul. Thank you so much. Tom, great presentation. I hate to beat this to death, but regarding the health insurance, I'm just trying to understand, when you make a change to healthcare insurance, in my experience, all participants shifted altogether. It sounds like there's some folks that, for various reasons, cannot or don't want to. I'm not sure which. I'm just not understanding why. There's certain benefits that they receive that they wouldn't with the new healthcare insurance.
Sure. So let me be clear. We have signed MOUs, 5 unions, 2 to go. Every indication from those unions is they're signing. They just haven't been able to get together, vote, but we informed the state partnership plan folks on May 1st that the entire Board of Ed is moving. Now, there's no requirement an employee as an individual take health insurance, but all of our non-union folks and all 6 unions on the Board of Ed side, or 7 unions, whatever it is now, will move to the state partnership plan. I'm confident in that. Nobody's digging in their heels. It's just been a matter of timing and the field rep from the home office coming down and getting everybody together for a vote. So we've not been met with resistance.
Awesome. I just heard that it was around $35,000 per person if they didn't. Is that correct?
That's roughly the average cost for each plan that we have, yes.
Okay.
Actually, 31,000. Close enough.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Harry. Moving on to any questions regarding contracted services. Representative Jelinek.
I have a question on page 32 in your budget. On contracted services, there's a proposed increase to the curriculum development line item by $5,000. Do our teachers participate in curriculum development as part of their contract? And where do these funds go? Is this a redundant effort?
Yeah, they do. In the teacher contract, it is outlined that there's a curriculum rate that they are to be paid when they help work on curriculum. Typically, we do that right after school gets out in June, so I don't have the curriculums memorized in my mind. If that's important, I can certainly, I know, for example, we have K-5 math coming up this summer to work on, so we'll have 20 teachers working on that, give or take. So, and then throughout the course of the school year, release time, whatever it may be, but if it's off school hours like the summer, teachers are paid a rate per contract. So that's what that line is for.
Okay. I have the second one on contracted, all right, through you, Paul. All right, also on page 32, contracted services athletics. There's a proposed increase to $79,000, which I'm assuming is the athletic trainer. But based on the details on page 66, which is your athletic budget matrix, it appears that the athletic trainer is listed for $84,000. I'm assuming the $79,000 is the correct number?
It is 79, yes.
Okay.
The number on page 32 is obviously what we budgeted. On the other page you mentioned, that was a early working document from the athletic director. We were anticipating 84, it came in at 79, so we budgeted 79.
I will say
That's
on
a fair
that
question.
On that budget matrix, the athletic budget matrix, a lot of those numbers do not match what your
Okay.
line items are. So for backup, it
We'll get
helps to have things
consistency.
that look the same.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, any other discussion regarding contracted services? Any other discussion regarding contracted services? Moving on, transportation. Any discussion regarding transportation? Any discussion regarding transportation? Moving on. Beat insurance to a dead horse. Any other questions regarding insurance? Other questions regarding insurance? Moving on, communications. Questions regarding communications? Any questions regarding communications? Moving on, tuition. Any questions regarding tuition? Any questions regarding tuition? Moving on, other purchase services. Any questions regarding other purchase services? Any questions regarding other purchase services? Moving on, instructional supplies. Any questions regarding instructional supplies? Representative Childs. Any other questions regarding instructional supplies? Any other questions regarding instructional supplies? Moving on, operation and maintenance of buildings. Any questions regarding operations, maintenance of buildings? Any questions regarding operations, maintenance of buildings? Moving on, textbooks, library books, other supplies. Any questions regarding textbooks, library books, other supplies? Hearing none, moving on, equipment. Representative Childs.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Moderator. So my question for equipment is around best practice for the Chromebooks. Last year we were told it was best to put it on capital. This year it's back on this budget. Really, where's the best place for it to be, or does it just depend each year? I don't know. It feels kind of flip-floppy, so I just want to make sure that I understand that.
I don't have a great answer, so I'm going to defer to Joe.
I mean, it's semantics at the end of the day, right? Whether it comes out of the operating budget or comes out of capital. So something to think about with Chromebooks. You guys are gonna have this expense every single year from now until whatever the next technology is. So for me, I would plan it in operating, which is where it was 3 years ago, and we were directed to take it out of there and move it to capital. But as far as best practice, there's really no best practice for it. It's really where you wanna plan for it.
Thank you.
Representative Delights.
Through you, Paul. The 197 for the Chromebooks, do you feel like that's gonna be consistent year to year? Or do you feel like that's gonna increase with the change? Yeah, it's of course gonna increase with changes.
We were having a discussion this morning with our IT director, Mark Gear. We're already seeing some impact from tariffs and things of that nature, but
Sure.
we budgeted 197 and we'll buy as many as we can with 197.
I guess my big question on the equipment, within the budget, I think it's page 68 if my glasses are working today. It said specific projects for 25-26 are as follows. So they're to me, that means specific for this year only. That doesn't mean operating. To me, that leans more towards it being a capital expense. Just in that description. Yes, no, maybe so?
You talking specifically Chromebooks?
I mean Chromebooks, but the entire thing is listed as a one-time plan. So we're talking the printing environment, the replacement switches, are those all gonna be an every year thing? Is that a variable cost? Again, we talk about that compounding budget and it being there every year. Is it something that we could work together to kind of?
I'll have Mark Gear come up in just a minute, but those are definitely, I'm gonna use the word infrastructure, are yearly expenses. It may be, Mark, you can begin to make your way up. You know, there's yearly expenses on infrastructure every single year. What those buckets are might change, meaning, and again, this is not my department or my area of expertise, but you know, we might be doing Wi-Fi access points one year, not doing those the next year. It might be switches or servers, but I'll let you talk a little bit about tech equipment and how you arrive at what the need is in any given year.
Sure. So I've kind of looked at what we have for equipment, the end of life dates on things, and what I sort of found out is that a lot of our equipment is going to end of life all at once because that's what was purchased. Network switches were installed when the buildings were new. Buildings are old. A lot of the switches are now end of life. Technology has changed immensely from when we first bought them. So, you know, in my mind, it seemed to be a better option to sort of piecemeal it over time, where we buy 5, 8, 10 switches here and there, instead of trying to replace 100 of them at once. So it is an ongoing expense, and it's an ongoing sort of maintenance item. Cisco is the brand that we use. Cisco warranties them for 10 years. So right now we're at 12, 13 years on some, 14 years. So we're really pushing it. That kind of falls under the cybersecurity thing too, where all of a sudden they stop doing updates for them. If there's a security vulnerability, we can't get it. So I'm trying to sort of keep ahead of it a little bit. They're playing catch up right now with a lot of these devices. And the same thing with the Chromebooks. With our current plan, basically it's 2 grade levels getting new ones, 4th grade and 9th grade. Everyone else sort of keeps what they have for those 4 years. In the 4 years, they're pretty well beaten up. Most of the ones that we purchased now, we got during COVID. So they were from 2021. They're pretty used up. So again, not trying to replace the entire 2,400 devices at once. We try to do these 2 grade levels, so it's a constant refresh. We could do it the other way, but it would be coming back asking for millions of dollars at once, where this way it's a lot less than that. Does that sort of answer your question?
Right, well, it does, but I think if you came in asking for millions of dollars all at once, I don't think we're capable of doing that. I mean, right now, if you look at the rate that this particular budget is increasing in 10 years, the Board of Ed budget is over $100 million. If you just look at the numbers right now, if you continue to increase it 5%, it's going up over 100 million. So I think I'm just trying to find ways to kind of cost contain if we can. I'm not looking to cut big things out of it, but if we take that 200,000 and work with the town, is that something we can take down from this kind of bottom line? I know that we can't go below last year's number. I know that there are salary increases and operational increases that happen. Is this something that, again, can we shift, can we kind of partner so that this comes out of your operating?
Yeah.
And maybe not the whole equipment, maybe just those Chromebooks and iPads, toss them back.
Not for nothing, but that was actually part of our submission when we made it in November.
Right.
We asked for it on page 5 in our budget book. Didn't get funded at the time, so that's why it's back in operating.
And I hate to kind of toss the ball back and forth, but does it make sense?
We don't appropriate.
I'm agnostic to the funding source. I just know they're needed, so.
Right. Just a thought. Any thoughts over there?
It appears appears on what they're requesting, it would be consistent to fund it through a capital non-recurring as we do the town switches and all of our computers and laptops are all budgeted through capital. It's an equipment expense we budget every year. If it sounds to me, I'm not an IT expert, that a lot of those things would be consistent with putting them to capital as we do it on the town side.
Okay, not sure. I totally followed that.
So when we have to update any of our technology infrastructure, that is in our capital budget.
Yep.
Operating is software, some maintenance costs and things, but new equipment or replacing of major infrastructure is all in capital.
So, I mean, this obviously, in theory, should be in the Board of Ed's capital plan, correct? But it's not, it's in operating. I see you, Joe.
We submitted it, the board approved
I
the
heard,
capital
you submitted
plan.
it as capital and it got out of that. I got that.
We gotta be careful here, right?
Yep.
Let's bifurcate the conversation on the Chromebooks.
Okay.
Right, and have
That's its own thing.
conversation on that.
Check.
On the nickel dime stuff, and I know that this isn't nickel dime, right, when you look at big numbers, but $60,000 for replacement switchers, routers, servers, and controllers. That's the break and fix stuff. So, Mark, you don't want it there, because then you're gonna be coming back to the board every time you need to get something replaced.
Yeah, and, you know, it's one of those things, if it fails, you know, we're basically down.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have a lot of spare network switches laying around, things like that, so we're trying to give
The
them.
equivalent of having the principals come back for paper.
Yeah,
Yeah, pretty much.
through the years, you've approved capital expenses for things like major service upgrades, $720,000 for a server upgrade, those big ticket items. This is more like, we know this school needs 3 because they're just not working anymore, or break and fix type things. The Chromebooks is a replacement cycle year after year after year. Again, funding source doesn't necessarily matter to me. I just know that they're needed every year. They're integral to teaching and learning.
I'm just wondering if we can take it out of town funding source as we did last year, save the taxpayer, reduce your budget just that little bit more.
Just be reminded that anything that is cut for, even though your recommendation is a transfer, the board still needs to come back to all 3 boards to request that funding. So we would wanna.
Which we did last year, and I think you had the funding by June.
But as he was discussing, we do the same thing on the town side for repairs and things like that, that you just, it's not, even for infrastructure, it's not a large piece. We budget as well. And all
So just a conversation, I have one more quick one. On page 69, and this is again just another clerical, but for going through the budget, I got a little stuck with equipment other when there's an increase of 78,000 and the percentage is 0.
Another set of eyes, I can tell you, we have 5 people do a deep, close read on this, and every year we miss something, so thank you.
I am all set, thanks.
Any other discussion regarding equipment? Representative Narcissus Green.
Through you, Mr. Moderator. I am just curious about the use of Chromebooks specifically at the high school level. You are not able to use Microsoft products with Chromebooks. You can only use Google products, which makes it really difficult to teach students how to use things like Excel and Outlook and other things that are absolutely necessary as they exit high school. Additionally, I'm not sure if this is offered, but if you have AutoCAD classes or anything that requires Adobe, those also cannot be used on Chromebooks, which means that all of that schoolwork has to be done in school at a computer lab. I'm just wondering, other than a cost standpoint, why is it that we're having our high school students who are about to enter the workforce using a device that is not going to prepare them for the workforce?
Yeah, I mean, cost is one factor, but I know you said ignore cost. I mean, we're like most, if not every single school district in Connecticut, most, I want to say all, is Google environment. You can run Office web-based products on a Chromebook through Office 365, for example, which many of us have in our homes. high school math department does, in some of their classes, use Microsoft Surface tablets for math. I know it's not a one-for-one, and I also know you're an educator, but I'm trying to educate the masses. There are a lot of similarities between Google Docs and Word, Google Sheets and Excel, for sure. But all of our infrastructure, for lack of a better word, is Google-based. So student email is Google-based. Teachers use Google Classroom. Obviously, the Docs platform integrates with Google Classroom as they submit their assignments. I don't worry about the tech savviness of this generation. Those skills are transferable. Whether you're typing a formula in Sheets or in Excel, the transferable skill is thinking through what does this formula need to be. So I don't know if any of the principals want to chime in or anybody else and talk a little bit about, anybody back there? Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the license, I don't know, Mark, if you want to talk a little bit about the licensing for Office is.
Because I live in both worlds. I live in the Microsoft world and the Google world, and they are very similar. 90% of the formulas do work fine in Google and in Excel. The biggest difference is one button's here, and then you open the other program and the button's over here. The wording might be a little different on what they call it, but like Tom said, the skill set is basically the same. It's for us to kind of teach every program out there and all the nuances of it. It's very difficult. We just don't have the capacity to do it. The cost would be astronomical. You sort of wanted to stay away from the cost, but this came up at our Board of Finance meeting a while ago. They asked the exact same question. A Chromebook runs about $350 per student. A Windows computer is going to run about $800 per student. And then you have to add on licensing for antivirus and malware intrusion and all this other stuff, which is going to bring that total up to about probably $1,800 per device per student. So it gets very cost prohibitive very quickly. So we do have the labs that do support those, things like that. And the students can use all of the Microsoft 365 products, which is Microsoft is moving everything to 365. There really isn't a downloadable version anymore unless you pay extra. That's sort of the basics of it.
I think there's some cybersecurity differences between
There
a
are,
Chrome
yeah.
operating system being a little bit more secure than a PC laptop from a cybersecurity standpoint. A little out of my lane, but.
Yeah, that's the other big portion of it. We spend a lot of time on cybersecurity, and we spend a decent chunk of change on it as well. Chromebooks are basically a secured platform. Google hasn't admitted that they have been hacked. They're basically saying that they have never been hacked, is what Google's saying. Microsoft says they get hacked all the time. So it's sort of easier to go with, hey, this is easier for us. It's a lot less management, a lot less maintenance, and we can do a lot more with the Chromebooks. If we need a piece of software pushed out, I can do the entire district in 5 minutes. With the Windows, it's a whole different world to do that. We actually need additional software, additional licensing. Again, that gets more and more complex. So that's sort of why we go with this Chromebook platform. And it's very intuitive to use. It integrates with the teachers and what they're doing. So yeah, it doesn't, the real world, a lot of businesses are starting to look into the Google environment more and more, but traditionally, most of them are still in that Windows world. But I think that platform it is changing now. I think in 5 years from now, it's going to be completely different where, all this stuff is going to be online based. There's not going to be really a Windows desktop anymore. Is sort of how everything's sort of trending. So, we're just sort of kind of waiting and seeing what everyone else is going to do. How the rest of the world's going to move.
All set? Representative Charlie.
Through you, Paul. This is actually directed towards Mr. Bono, Representative Bono. Mark kind of answered my question about being able to use some of those platforms in labs. So you know I'm a big proponent of the trades, Mike knows. Can you, in those trade classes, can you use the AutoCAD or the, estimating software on, are those all available to the kids? Because we need those.
Jen really put me on the spot.
I did.
Yeah, so.
Do your job.
Yeah. Yes, they all are. So like there are, service manual equipment that's all web-based, database, research-based. That's what kids would use in industry. A lot of the CAD modeling packages that we see are still Windows-based, but we have labs in like Adobe-based, like Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. We have labs at school that support that and that need that students use. So, but we're seeing a lot of those software manufacturers start to make web-based versions of that. So like a company like Autodesk is starting to put out like a web-based platform for their software. It's not catching on in industry quite so yet, but the reason they're doing it is they're trying to bridge education to industry to provide those like transferable skills that they're talking about. So the companies are trying to meet education where it's at, and education's trying to meet industry's need in kind of, a way that's fiscally and, infrastructurally responsible.
And you, as a tech teacher, feel like you have everything available to you? And it's not because you're a buddy thing. Like, do you have everything available to these kids?
We're doing really well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, Jen, any questions for the panel?
No, not for the panel. Unless he needed more.
Alright, moving forward, any other questions regarding equipment? Any other questions regarding equipment? Any other questions regarding dues and fees? Any other questions regarding dues and fees? Tom, I have a couple of questions. What unfunded mandates are impacting this year's budget, if any?
I mean, when we got done with the Board of Finance meeting, I sent the chair, I can send it to all of you too. I think it's 73 pages of state mandates. What will hit the budget, personal finance course next year is a new mandate. Next year will be the first year that we offer that course. No new staff to support that. We're utilizing existing staff to roll that out. Some minor expenses to write the curriculum and perhaps some support materials. When you look at the increase in our multilingual learner population, it's a law/mandate. Mandates are laws. When you hit 20 kids, you gotta have a bilingual program, so we're rolling that out in Oswegatchie next year. And it's the right thing to do. It's gonna benefit kids, it's gonna benefit learning, it's gonna benefit families. I'm not saying these things aren't valuable. Those are two very observable answers. Won't necessarily hit the operating budget, but the HVAC testing law rolls out, I think in 2025 or maybe the spring of 2026. That money's already in capital pipeline, so it won't hit operating, but that will hit us next year as well. Those are a few examples that come to the top of my head.
Now, the EV mandate for all of us has been disbanded for now. Is the EV mandate for school buses still in there?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
when is that due, and how is that gonna affect us down the road, if not immediately?
So not completely understood as of yet, but language in the state of Connecticut has most towns in the state going within 10 years. Waterford is identified as a
distressed municipality, environmental justice, distressed community. And it's only one little hamlet in Waterford that meets that designation, and
so roughly
our timeline might be earlier than the 10 years.
Yeah, so 4.5 years from now.
So explain distress to me, because I get a little confused, because we have an ability to pay, but we're distressed, so now I'm really confused.
Cause I don't get it either, I've asked an attorney to read into it, you have like 2 streets that fit the criteria. Let's say the criteria is 20% of residents within this area live at or below federal poverty levels, and you're like 20.2, so, I don't know.
So this would be another unfunded mandate that the state hasn't thought very clearly about. From my estimation, that will affect every taxpayer, because we would have to get the infrastructure.
Yeah, fair enough. So like right now, right, I'm signing a new 5-year contract with a bus company. I'm buying diesel buses, or they're providing diesel buses. And what the law says is that in 4.5 years, I keep bouncing around, 4.5 to 5. In 4.5 years, 100% of your bus fleet needs to be electrified.
That leads me into my next question. ECS funding, are we still being pretty much flat funded relative to other towns?
Yeah, I haven't heard any changes, maybe, I don't know if Rob has, I know Rob's done a lot of writing on this at the state level. I've not heard of any adjustments coming to Waterford. Everything I hear coming out of Hartford is status quo for Waterford.
So we have had talks in the past, and a lot of education and how kids do, a lot of it's based on through research on socioeconomic status. Is that a correct statement, would you say?
It's certainly a major driving factor.
So, and we haven't heard about it tonight, but I'm certainly gonna talk about it, because in 15 years, I've heard about it almost every single year, the town's ability to pay. And that we have the ability to pay, but yet we're also distressed. And when I look at 2 abilities of pay sheets, which this is available to everybody, which I'm gonna hand to Town Clerk Campbell as part of the minutes, our ability to pay from last year to this year has actually decreased. But yet, if you look at our per capita income is lower than East Lyme, but yet we have a higher ability to pay because of Dominion. And yet, that lower per capita income places an unfair burden on lower socioeconomic families in the town of Waterford. And East Lyme is getting roughly, Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, almost over $6 million more than we do. So I get concerned with putting that increased burden on Waterford families. And are you familiar with what CCM has been doing? There's been a large ad in the London Day and commercials all over.
A little bit. I don't follow them overly closely, but I do.
And most of the towns invest in CCM, and they do our research for all the towns. And I get real concerned when CCM is putting commercials and newspaper ads about our ECS funding, that we're getting flat funded, and we always say we have an ability to pay. And in the last 10 years, with inflation, the state has not reviewed the ECS funding formula. So we have folks on this body that work in the town of East Lyme. We have folks on the Board of Education that used to work on East Lyme. We have folks on the Board of Ed that used to work in New London. I mean, we're not New London, but at the very least, thank God our first select person wrote a letter to the state recommending for at least review the ECS funding formula. And I'm not saying we want to rely on the state, but for every dollar we don't get, that burden gets placed on the citizens of Waterford. And for our ECS funding formula to be flat and not even reviewed for 10 years with the rate of inflation has gone up is ludicrous to me. So, I would hope, you keep hearing the comment that we want to work together to try and lower the burden on the taxpayer while continuing giving our students and our families great educational services. There's something wrong at the state level when it's not looked at over 10 years by not giving, not just us, but New London and Montville, that are really our neighbors. That's concerning to me. And it's concerning to me because if you're a state legislator that represents East Lyme, do you really want to give up any of that money when their budget's roughly 12% higher? So I think it's unfair to the residents of Waterford that the state is not doing more, especially over the last 10 years. And I just hope that the board, looks under more stones, because a simple letter to the state, our state representatives, one of whom used to sit here, to keep placing that increased burden on taxpayers that have a lower per capita income than our surrounding towns is just plain wrong. So, and I hope the board is more creative and helps selectmen role and partners with selectmen role on the town government side to try and get that cost more in line. At the very least, I don't want to sound like a Karen, but at the same time, I think the very simple thing the state could do is at least weight per capita income of families, so that formula changes, so we get a little bit more relief. Because I just think it's unfair to the citizens of Waterford. We are not as wealthy as people think. We had former Mayor John DeStefano, who was a Democrat of New Haven, gubernatorial candidate, that said the way we fund education is becoming outdated. We had a former AFT union president who said we're not as wealthy as people think. So when people throw ability to pay, it's changed. And I sure hope the Board of Ed gets more creative and at least writes a letter to please review ECS funding so that our taxpayers who are working class can get some relief. And I don't know if you could do anything or help us out with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've certainly engaged our local delegation through the years on that. Part of our local delegation was on the education committee, although this particular issue falls to appropriations. Former state senator for this area sat on appropriations for a long time. We certainly engaged our local delegation. My statewide organization, CAPS, Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, has certainly advocated for ECS formula revision, and examination and revision. It's a legislatively driven formula, as you pointed out. You know, it's no one individual, it's not under the purview of the governor to tweak the formula, it's legislatively driven. There were some minor adjustments in recent years to really rob Peter to pay Paul and kind of shuffle some money around amongst some municipalities. So, I mean, certainly, I mean, I don't disagree with the word you said. I just brought up a slide that I very quickly went through in the essence of time earlier in the presentation. Well, we do, I'm not combating you, I'm not coming off defense, I'm just trying to educate the public. The board has done a lot. We continue to pursue competitive grants. Our CTE department at the high school, competitive grant called the Perkins Supplemental Grant, just obtained a $50,000 grant to assist in the flipping of our residential culinary program to a more commercial culinary program. That's $50,000 less that won't be in our budget this year or next year or the year after. You know, I talked a little bit about aggressive collective bargaining. Many of you sat here 7 or 8 years ago when coming out of teacher negotiations, where we negotiated a new salary schedule for new hires, and which at that time was considered one of the, if not most aggressive, negotiation sessions with teachers. You know, we've eliminated things like out-of-town magnet transportation. We've eliminated talented and gifted programming in the district. We've reduced teachers in alignment with enrollment trends. I think we've, over the last 5 years, reduced 13 teachers at middle school and high school. So your point is not lost. We will continue to examine things and operations. We're reducing high school FTEs next year to support ML programming. Those are tough decisions. So it's a collaborative effort. Waterford is 95% locally funded.
Yeah, I'm just concerned. I think the ECS, the state needs to do better, and at least at the very least, it needs to be reviewed, and per capita income needs to be weighted to help the residents of the town of Waterford. And not just Waterford, it would help New London, it would help Montville, because per capita income is awfully lower relative to Old Saybrook, East Lyme, Guilford, and I just think it's time for it to be reviewed at the state level. Just moving on, I have some questions regarding DEI, and it's affected me personally, which kind of bothers me. We've had conversations, I said this at the RTM before. I'm all for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I may have a different perspective on what each one of those letters mean. I also, when you look at me, people probably want to judge a book by its cover, but I come from a very multicultural background, family related. What has concerned me in the past is I keep hearing that we have a very diverse student body, and I understand that. But in the last few years, I've never seen a slide of our staffing, and yet I hear how we want to match our staffing with our student body. It's hard for me to get a grasp of that when I don't know how diverse our staff is. relative to our student body. I can tell you, I went through the Waterford school system, and my subjective opinion is that we seem to have been more diverse back then than we are today. And I can't prove that because I've never seen a slide to show me that. I have to travel for work at times, and I was at MedStar University Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland, and they had a big map that said, please post with a pin where you're from so we can show the diversity. I just want to see a slide. I hear so much about it, but I don't know if we are diverse enough or not, because I know our student body is, but I can't tell from our staff without seeing a slide to how that matches up. Also, I'm quite concerned, being an American Jew, over the last, depending upon your source, anti-Semitism has raised between 150 to 300%. And as my daughter is looking at colleges now, I have to be very concerned about not only the college she can get into, but how she's going to be treated. And it concerns me about her history curriculum. I hear things about people want to knock things down. Could you imagine if they knocked Auschwitz down? That's never going anywhere. Because just as much people may not agree with history, it's also meant to talk about the rights, the wrongs, what was done correctly, not just destroyed to create a different narrative. I'm very concerned. And I'm going to ask a question, and it's just from my perspective. Are American Jewish kids safe to go to school in Waterford today?
Yes. That's the short answer. We've done a lot of work in this area to combat hate speech, discrimination. One of the things that we did 3-4 years ago, could have been 5 years ago, I lose track with the pandemic, is we developed each of our 5 schools a defined protocol of how we're going to respond with when acts of discrimination or hate speech occur in our schools. So all 5 of our schools have a defined protocol that if X happens, this is going to be our response to that, in terms of what do we do with the perpetrator, what do we do with the victim, what do we do with their families, what do we do with the students who may have witnessed something, what's the educational component to this, as you pointed out, is so important. So that's one of the best way, most observable ways. Beyond that, we continue to focus on strong culture and climate in our schools. One of our metrics that we have on our student climate survey is, the question is, I feel like I belong at my school. And spring of 2024, that metric was at 67%. This is some of the data I shared, to your point about how are we measuring, I think it might have been you. Spring 2024 data, 67% of our students said they felt like they belonged in our schools. That's an unacceptable number in my book, personally, as the superintendent of this school district. This spring, we just got the data back last week. 89% of our kids said they felt like they belonged in our school. I would like to, my goal is 100. I want every kid to say they feel like they belong in the Waterford Public Schools. And I think it's, whether it's translation services, it's education, it's continued programming, it's response protocols, all of those things matter. It's making sure that we do have a diverse workforce. That is a strategy. So Connecticut passed a law, another mandate, but a good law, that every school district in Connecticut has to have a increasing educator diversity action plan of how you're going to increase diversity amongst your workforce. About 1/3 of our students are students of color. Our diversity amongst our workforce is significantly lower than that. It's better. It's like hovered around 2.3% about 4 or 5 years ago. It's north of that now. That's another metric we're tracking on our district data dashboard that we unveiled in February. Only 8% of students in teaching programs at the university level are students of color. So it is a challenge of who's going to get their share of that 8%. But we have an action plan. We had to submit that to the state for approval. It was approved. It's posted on our website. Anybody can see it. It's all of those things. It's making sure that the books students read in a third grade classroom, that they see themselves in that literature. And it's not just white male superheroes. There's more people in the world than just white male superheroes. So making sure that students see themselves in the books that they read and the adult that's helping them each and every day. It's really around creating that sense of belonging, because if kids belong and feel like they belong and they feel like there's a trusted adult, at least one in a school district, the research shows they're gonna achieve better academically.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I just, because I sit on a DEI committee, and I think sometimes these DEI committees take on a lot, because diversity, equity, and inclusion should not be divisiveness, exclusion, and ignorance. And I think when you uplift one group only to marginalize another, that's not true DEI. And I think we all need to do better. Because I sometimes wonder if it's doing more harm than good. Because sometimes it seems like we're fostering more divisiveness, more exclusion, and more ignorance than we are diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I just think we all need to do better, and including myself. But I think moving forward, discrimination of any kind is wrong. And I hope just as we move forward, we all do better from that perspective. Any other discussion? Representative Mullen, sorry, my bad.
Hi, through you, Mr. Bonner, sorry for my cold. I just had a couple questions regarding the contracted services, regarding the vans. I know they're up for the contract renewal. My daughter's in a wheelchair, and I know multiple times last year that the van, the lift stopped working like midway through the bus route. So she had to get lifted off the bus, which obviously isn't safe, but then the lift would constantly get stuck. So she couldn't go up, she couldn't go down, it just stopped working. So my concern is, obviously, the maintenance part of it. I know they just purchased a brand new van, that was new this year, but what happens if that van goes out? There's no backup system in place for her.
So first, let me apologize, I actually didn't know about that. The wheelchair accessible vans are run by STA. That company is being replaced with, there's 2 wheelchair accessible vans coming to Waterford. Traditionally, we only have a need for 1. So there is 1 that's redundant.
Okay. My second question is regarding the capital plan for the Oswegatchie playground. I saw that you guys had in place for the future to redo this resurfacing of the playground, but the playground itself is starting to get in disrepair, as most of you, I'm sure you are well aware. But going forward, I think we need to try and make the playgrounds more inclusive for everybody to use, and not just have one thing that one student can do. You know, like if that one thing breaks, then that student may not be able to participate in recess. So that's just, you know, something to keep in mind when you're going forward to do a big project like that. So I just appreciate all the effort you guys put into this. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Representative Jelinas?
So based on our conversation, I would encourage moving the Chromebooks and iPads back to the town. On the capital side, I would also encourage that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance work that ASAP. Again, when we talk about tariffs, if you have to wait until August to order those versus ordering them in June, that's likely gonna save you some money. So if we can do that for this year, I think that's a way that we can partner and work. Also, after the conversation about insurance, I think again, kind of that creative thinking, partnership, and using that insurance fund makes a lot of sense to then reduce that component as well. So I would make a motion to reduce this proposed increase to the Board of Education budget by $538,000.
We're just figuring out the amount.
Oh, which would leave you with a total, I had it somewhere. I'm not gonna find it now. Oh, yeah. Okay, I have it. There it is. Nope, not that one. You will? Oh, no, I got it. 59,828,307.92. $538,000.
308? Right, it's 308, yep. 308.
Oh, okay. Yep, so 59,828,308. Jen, or Columbus. either one.
There's a motion on the floor by Representative Zelinas, seconded by Harry Colonis, to reduce the Board of Education by $538,000 to a total of $59,828,308. Any discussion? Representative Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My question is, this is a cut. I've listened to your conversation, but it seemed to be in the future because we do not have the ability to strike a deal and to adjust the capital budget, which is already in place if we haven't approved it. So this is a big risk. I mean, I understand your line of thinking, but to cut that much out of this budget when it's safe and when there is no procedure for us for the RTM to move it to the capital budget next week, I think that's a discussion we can have for next year, ahead of time.
I'm not saying move it to the capital budget.
So you just wanna cut it?
I'm saying take it out of this, come back around, ask for that additional appropriation, just like we did last year. So they'll come back and get that 197. Just like we did last year.
Yeah, well, that was a little bit uncomfortable. But, and again, I see your argument, why it goes in capital, I see yours, why it goes in maintenance, but we're talking way more than the Chromebooks at this point.
Well, but the 197 is the Chromebook component of this, right? And again, we had someone in here earlier talking about our taxpayers and our residents. We've talked about how we're not as wealthy as we think. If we can take something
Yes, but
off
I'm
the
trying
burden
to
of our
figure out, I
taxpayer.
don't wanna interrupt you, but, last year we had a lot more of that extra surplus, the bonus money that we were going through, that we were using for these appropriations. Last I heard, we're pretty much tapped out there, so that it's not necessarily something they can just go ask for another appropriation for.
Currently, the Board of Finance could choose to fund that, not through the general fund balance, but through their capital non-recurring fund balance. There is more than enough in there if the board so chose to fund that way.
That's an unknown. Yeah, I'm not comfortable doing it this way, sorry.
Any other discussion? Representative Marson.
Thanks, through you, Paul Ildowitz for Ms. Glynis. And I'm asking just to clarify, so how would this, motion or this plan, how would it benefit the district, the school system versus the taxpayers? What is your thinking? If you could just walk me through the thinking of this.
So I'm thinking this is a cost savings, like a reduction in the Board of Education budget is a cost savings. That money could be appropriated through capital non-recurring and through the insurance general fund balance that we have already paid into as taxpayers. That's not extra tax money. So for someone like the woman who was in here earlier, saying we need to be conscious of our residents, by reducing this piece, we are helping those residents.
1 second, Representative Marson, you're all set? Because it may get answered.
Yeah, no, it made sense. I guess so there's already a pool of money that can be utilized for the Chromebooks, et cetera.
Yep.
And would that have to be voted? I mean, is there a risk that someone may make an argument that
it shouldn't, you know, with Board of Finance, or that someone, is there a possibility that that may be turned down by a certain elected body?
I guess there's always that possibility, but I would hope between the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, the RTM, the Board of Education, that there's a little bit of trust in this process. And I would hope that as a group, we can understand where this comes from, and then the policy to come back around and get it. For the Board of Education, if we put this 197 through capital non-recurring, they have the opportunity to order these Chromebooks much sooner and possibly avoid the unknown increase that could come along.
Any other discussion? Representative Driscoll, sorry.
Thank you. It's a new clarification. The capital non-recurring fund, because, you know, that's a set budget for now. Finance director said there's enough there, so are you saying we have a surplus balance in the capital non-recurring because we put money in there before?
There's a current balance there now, without requesting any additional funding of approximately $500,000.
It's not quite enough to cover.
It's enough to cover the 197.
But we also don't know what's coming up in the next 3 budget hearings.
But
that may need 500,000.
We don't, but the other component of that, the 200,000 is what would come out of capital non-recurring, leaving us with a balance of approximately 300,000. The insurance component would come out of the insurance general fund, which has a balance.
Again, I understand your way of thinking, I agree with parts of it, but my sense is the way this whole process is set up, that should have been decided at the beginning. Now it's an iffy, risky thing.
Any other, Representative Bracciali?
Through you, Paul. We did this last year, went off without a hitch. I think you guys got everything you wanted, I believe. I will definitely give them the money should they come back and ask for it. I'm saying that publicly. I think what some people don't understand is once you establish the Board of Ed budget, you cannot cut their budget. You can decrease the amount they ask for, but you can never go back and cut their budget. So if they have $10 in it today, and they ask for another 10 and we give them 5, they're still getting an addition of $5. We can never go take that $5 back. But they can come back and they can ask that money be appropriated for the Chromebooks. You have my word that I will give the money for the Chromebooks should you come back and ask. I support your motion. Danielle.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? So for clarification purposes, for me, I'm gonna take one thing at a time. Kim, the $342,000 roughly, that's already in an account.
Correct.
So it's money that's already been taxed, we're not gonna tax the taxpayer.
Correct.
If we don't reduce it, and it stays in the Board of Ed budget, we're taxing the taxpayer again.
Correct.
The Chromebooks, that money is already there, am I right in saying that? Right? So that money has already been collected, it's already been taxed. If we vote in favor of the motion, it lowers the Board of Ed's total amount, they still get the Chromebooks, and the taxpayer isn't overburdened by that amount, because it's already there. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Kim, the Chromebooks are the same thing, correct?
Correct.
So, really, we did this, I believe, 2 years ago. Rob, you're okay with doing that special meeting?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna take the temperature down, just a tad. The Board of Ed has done a great job. I just had a conversation the other day with Tom. You know, yes, to answer your question, this is all possible. I think everyone here knows everything we've done has been creative, outside the box thinking. And not one child, not one student, not one teacher, not one faculty member has ever been negatively impacted, ever. This is a creative way. Now, I'm not speaking for the Board of Finance, Mr. Moderator. They have to be the ones that say yes. I do know that you've had nothing but support from the Board of Selectmen when you've done this. I know for sure that 2 of the 3 Board of Selectmen, and I guarantee 3 will support this. So if it's any help and consolation to Representative Driscoll or anyone else, this is a creative way of looking outside the box to try to figure out how can you reduce some taxes for the taxpayers, what I'm hearing, and I agree with, but making sure that this Board of Education continues to go in the direction they are going, which is it's going in the right direction. So I hope that reassures this body.
And then my only other question, is there any conversations with the Board of Finance?
I have not, I can't speak for the selectmen, but in past meetings, board members have discussed being consistent with equipment and capital projects across the board and the town side.
Yes, Glenn?
Yeah, I'm gonna weigh in with just one aspect of this that hasn't been discussed.
If you come to the mic, Glenn,
Oh,
you
sure.
just thank you.
I can project.
By all means.
Okay. Just
And Glenn, can you just for the audience, and I believe we're being taped, so if you can just for the audience and the
Glenn
citizens.
Patterson, current chair of the Board of Finance. Just an observation for this group is that the process by which you're going to handle this 1-year issue with the Chromebooks, it can work, it can come back through, and I personally don't see that as far as this year goes, it's an issue. However, when you start when you start using reserve funds for recurring expenses, those Chromebooks are a recurring expense. They're either gonna have to be in the Board of Ed budget, or they're gonna have to be in the capital plan every year. So, looking forward, the taxpayer, now maybe this year, yes, you may be able to save the taxpayer this one time, and no argument with that philosophy. But this is not the way to do business with recurring expenses unless on the capital side, everybody recognizes that those Chromebooks are gonna be there every year and you're gonna have to fund it. It's just from my perspective, 3 years ago, I was the one who insisted that they go into the capital. And now this year came and they're back on the board side. You can I don't wanna use the word get away with, because that's not right. You can fund that, this one-time shot this year, by taking it from the reserve and the capital non-recurring fund. You can do it, but everybody here has to recognize that going forward, they gotta be in one place or the other, because that capital non-recurring fund, the balance may not be there, and as been observed, our general fund balance is rapidly approaching the upper limit of the Board of Finance policy for having 15% of the town's budget in reserve in case of catastrophe. So I just wanted to throw that out there, so that everybody recognizes that. And I can actually draw another analogy too, where we took $1 million from the last fiscal year, we took $1 million from the general fund, the excess, the reserve in the general unassigned balance of the general fund, and put it towards a tax reduction. That was a one-time shot for basically a recurring expense, and it caused the first selectman to scramble to say, yeah, now I got to get that $1 million back somehow. It's just it can be done, and I understand why you would want to go do it as this body, but just recognize that going forward, those Chromebooks are going to be in one place or the other. That reserve may not always be there, so you can go off and do this.
And if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, just for Kim, and I don't know if this is a Kim or Glenn question, because I'm trying to take each thing separately. The 342, is that something that has to go to the Board of Finance, or that comes out of the Department of Finance?
Yeah, again, that's between, that does not have to come to the Board of Finance. That's a transaction within that fund that gets handled on the finance level.
Okay, so.
I'm really only talking the Chromebooks.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because I
Yeah.
don't want to confuse the two, because we're combining two issues, the
Yeah, I
Chromebooks
understand.
and the insurance, and I want to be clear for the members, so, all right, thank you.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? I'm sorry, Representative Morissette. Glenn, you may have one more question.
Oh.
Yes, through you, Mr. Moderator, I do have a question for you, Glenn. So, if I hear you correctly, because I think we all, the spirit of the RTM is obviously we want to do what's best for our constituents, always. But what I'm hearing you say is that this could create a, sort of not a slippery slope, but create a precedence of perhaps pulling from a pool of money that there may be some back and forth, some discrepancy. I guess if there's any math people in here, I'd be curious to know, by moving the Chromebook cost to the Board of Finance approval, exactly what that would save the taxpayers, if we're looking at the upcoming year, or, what are we talking here? Are we talking like 0.1%? I know I'm not a math person, so I don't know. So I'm just wondering, is, the benefit risk, how does that weigh?
That's gonna be a very difficult question, because it's gonna be on the final mill rate is what I would do that calculation on. I could try and come up with an estimate for you, but it's not gonna be accurate until we have a final mill rate.
Well, I think that,
I'm gonna take a stab at this. I'm sorry, if, depending on how you do this, if you do, the total reduction, I would think would bring the Board of Ed budget down close to 4%. I could be wrong.
3.85 is the upper.
There you go. So then you just extrapolate down to well, you can't do it until you know the final budget on Wednesday night. Representative Driscoll.
Can I offer, maybe this is a simpler way for Kim to do this, and that's only because I've heard Bill Sheehan do it, but I can't remember exactly how. If you're talking about taking $500,000 out, that's $500,000 short of the budget, whatever the total is. Anyway, we're trying to see the impact. How much is $500,000 worth if you take it out, when you calculate the mill rate?
Typically, $500,000 is about 0.11 mill rate, typically.
0.11 mill rate, yeah. So, see, Bill would then proceed and tell me exactly how many dollars it was for the average homeowner, but.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I usually if it's under one, it's $25 or something.
Any other discussion? Representative Driscoll.
Just want to follow up, thank you for, trying to allay my fears, Mr. First Selectman. My concern with this is the way we're doing it again, and we did it last year again. I understand where you're coming from, I get the whole concept, I think we should lower, wherever possible, lower the thing. In the end, if we put it, we should have decided, and I thought we were going to last year, capital or not for the Chromebooks. I mean, that became a night like now. That should have been done ahead of time. The capital plan was set ahead of time. You guys had a whole list of requests, as I recall. The first pass at the capital plan shows you didn't get any of them. But that would have been the time to put the Chromebooks in. It's us backtracking and double tracking and again tapping into, kind of glad we have a surplus in capital non-recurring fund, but again, that's taxpayer dollars. We burned through 13 million of those dollars we were overtaxed them for. And we don't have a lot to show for it, really. So I'm concerned that if we just keep doing this every year, this should have been decided at the start of the budget process, when the Board of Ed went with their big package, the town was comparing theirs, negotiate what makes the cut, what makes it, not change our mind at this late stage and then send them all back to the drawing board. It's kind of frustrating if we're trying to figure out what's happening with our money. I'm still trying to track money from last year that, you know, one department didn't spend, but they had a surplus, which would make us think maybe you don't need as much. They had a surplus, but they gave it to another department that had a shortage, but it doesn't show up that way in the budget. So it's we're jiggling the money back and forth, and I'd like to have a little more planning up front. Sorry.
Representative Condon.
Just bringing it up only because you brought it up. You said that the Board of Finance, you carry 15% of the town's budget, but that's not the state minimum, right?
Yeah, it's guidance from Government Finance Officers Association. They actually give guidance that you should have 25%. Towns vary.
What's the state minimum though? Isn't there a state mandate on that?
There's no minimum. And there's no state guidelines.
No, I know, so bonding rate, the ability to pay and all that stuff. Can you just go over, because you said it kind of quickly, we're hinging a lot of this discussion on your definition of a capital expenditure. Can you just go over that again?
Well, so what's going on tonight could be, now this is a hypothetical. If the Chromebooks, the argument for the Chromebooks is, on one side, it's an operating expense. It's like a textbook, right? You give it to a student, they use it for a while, it wears out, you throw it away, you get more. On the capital side, it's equipment, it's equipment that meets the criteria of I gotta spend more than $10,000 for equipment, it's a capital expense. So those are kind of the two sides of the ledger, that, from my perception, that you can argue one way or the other that it should be in the capital category or the operating category. From the standpoint of making it a capital expense, there are towns where the town side and the Board of Ed don't get along as well as Waterford. And that you raise the potential of the town side holding the Board of Ed hostage, saying, you know, hey, these are on the capital side, you need them to run your business, but how do we negotiate this out? To me, that's, you can put it in either place, and if the way that things are set up in town now, it has to come from and go through the Board of Selectmen to make it into the capital plan. And it didn't make it this year, so it got put into operating. And that's the reason that it's an operating. Like I said, I was the one who years ago said, hey, this should be in capital, because I think it's equipment.
So on your last statement there, you said that you thought years ago this should be a capital expenditure.
Yes.
But your thinking on that has changed?
My thinking is that's a scenario. To me, the taxpayer, to fund education, the taxpayer is gonna have to pay for it either way, either as a capital expense or within the operating budget. But
So just to reiterate, so from the Board of Finance, your opinion was that this could be financed through the capital?
Yeah.
And that's an appropriate way to do it. All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? Yeah, Representative Trout.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Moderator. So my question is, the 342,000, that is, what is that cut for?
That's coming, that's the insurance contingency that we had discussed.
And it's for this year only, or it'll continue year after year?
So the decrease won't continue. I'm watching both of them shake their heads too. It won't continue year after year. This is a thing built into your plan, right? So
the reason that this number is higher is because this is gonna be our first year going into this new plan.
Right.
So next year we'll have a better grasp of how many people are gonna be on the plan. So all we're looking to capture right now is the people that transition from either not having, or I'm sorry, people that transition from not having a plan with us to having a plan with us. Because not all people are eligible for this plan on day number one. Going with the state partnership plan opens up eligibility to a whole slew of people. The numbers real. You're gonna get hit with a number. But if the town is saying that the internal service fund wants to handle it, I'll just document this and move forward. And Sue, just to circle back a little bit, there was actually 2 projects 3 years ago, the energy efficiency project and the IT Chromebooks, iPads. Both of those the first request, the energy efficiency project, also was submitted with capital. It did not get approved, we did not put it into the budget because there's only 1 more year left, but that will be coming back for an appropriation over the next 6 weeks.
Representative Morrison.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Moderator. So with the Chromebooks, we can all agree that obviously every year technology is gonna get better and faster and probably more expensive. I would imagine with unknown tariffs and just the way that the economy goes. So if this were something, say, if we set a precedent that it was not something budgeted through the Board of Ed, but budgeted through a different body, is there any guarantee, well, nothing's a guarantee, but if we're looking at, the potential for the pool of money from the, that Danielle had mentioned, the Board of Finance folks. I'm really tired, yes, exactly, I'm sorry. So is there a potential for it to become that that pool of money will not be enough to fund the updated Chromebooks or the updated technology? And is there a way, and I don't know if anyone can answer this, is there a way to, if we do decide to go through the non-recurring capital, thank you, how do we plan for that potential increase in the cost of the technology as it goes up, as everything else goes up? So I hope that made sense. Like, if it's gonna come from one particular pool of money, are we making sure that that particular pool, the non-recurring capital, non-recurring fund, how do we ensure that there will be enough money in that fund to cover the growing cost of technology moving forward?
That balance, generally, the Board of Finance uses for projects that come in out of budget cycle. Everything currently on our capital plan that's going through the budget cycle does not utilize that fund. That goes into the normal tax year, mill rate, residents are taxed on it. That fund balance is, for example, if they come, I need an extra $20,000, the bids came in high, that's where the Board of Finance would go to. Or if something comes in, a new project, as this would be out of budget cycle, it's not a normal go-to every time something comes up. So if there's new projects, they would be taxed during the budget cycle year.
Any other discussion? Representative Driscoll.
Thank you. So just to clarify, if this goes through and we tap the surplus in the capital non-recurring fund to cover the Chromebooks, that brings down the tax bill for the taxpayers this year. But unless we make it part of the motion, for God's sakes, force the town and the Board of Ed to figure this out before the budgets start going through the process next year. Because this year, we're dropping their tax by 0.11 mil, $10. And next year, though, it's going to look like it's a lot higher because we So everybody who's here, if you get reelected or decide to come back, I know you guys will remember this conversation. If I'm not here, remind them when you're having the same conversation next time.
This is the second time we've had this conversation.
Yeah, and it feels like the 10th.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none, there is a motion on the floor by Representative Janilis and Representative Colonis to reduce the Board of Ed budget by $538,000 to a new total of $59,828,308. Roll call vote, Mr. Campo. Oh, hang on, Representative.
Which one are we voting on now? Just insurance?
No, we're voting on both altogether. Insurance, one motion together.
It's a motion right now is to reduce by $538,000. That's the yes to reduce and no not to reduce. Ms. Agman Bosa.
No.
Mr. Bono.
I abstain as a member of the board, as an employee of the Board of Ed.
Ms. Brashali.
Yes.
Mr. Campo.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
No.
Ms. Childs.
No.
Mr. Colonis.
Yes.
Mr. Condon.
Yes.
Mr. Dembeck.
Yes.
Ms. Driscoll.
No.
Mr. Fioravanti.
No.
Mr. Goldstein.
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez.
No.
Ms. Green.
No.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Ms. Jessic.
Yes.
Mr. Keatley.
Yes.
Ms. Khan.
No.
Ms. McKenzie.
Yes.
Mr. Monahan.
Yes.
Ms. Mooreshead.
No.
Ms. Mullen.
No.
Ms. Mullen Cole.
No.
Mr. Olinsu.
No.
Ms. Stewart Jelinas.
Yes.
Mr. Segru.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now we have to vote on the new total, folks. The new total is $59,828,000. Excuse me, $59,828,308. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Roll call vote, Mr. Campo.
This is for the new balance of $59,828,308. Ms. Agman Bosa.
No.
Mr. Bono.
I abstain.
Ms. Brashali.
Yes.
Mr. Campo.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
No.
Ms. Childs. Mr. Colonis.
Yes.
Mr. Condon.
Yes.
Mr. Dembeck.
Yes.
Ms. Driscoll. Mr. Fioravanti.
No.
Mr. Goldstein.
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez.
No.
Ms. Green.
No.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Ms. Jessic.
Yes.
Mr. Keatley.
Yes.
Ms. Khan.
No.
Ms. McKenzie.
Yes.
Mr. Monahan.
Yes.
Ms. Mooreshead.
Yes.
Ms. Mullen.
Yes.
Ms. Mullen Cole.
No.
Mr. Olinsu.
Sure.
Ms. Stewart Jelinas.
Yes.
Mr. Segru.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, folks. Thanks, folks. We're not gonna adjourn. We stand in recess till Wednesday, May 7th.